Hello, and welcome to the little village of Marienrachdorf. We'll go into a little bit of history on that in a minute, but this is the church in Marienrachdorf. It's the largest church we have here in our parish, and I thought we'd have a quick look inside the church and also outside the church today. It's a rather lovely building. The village of Marienrachdorf has about 1,000 inhabitants, which makes it quite a small place. It's about twice the size of the village we live in, and we live in a really tiny, tiny little village. So this place isn't much bigger, but why on earth does it have such an enormous church? Well, historically speaking, this was the only village around here that had a church, and everyone sort of came here on the Sundays and the high days to go to church. So there's about 8 or 9 little villages around here. Some of them now have church buildings, but throughout history they didn't, and they all congregated here in Marienrachdorf. A little bit of history about Marienrachdorf. It's one of the oldest villages here in the region, and actually it's this church, or there has been a church in this position since over 800 years, which makes it one of the oldest churches in the region, certainly one of the oldest in the diocese. We're in the diocese of Limburg here in Germany, and it's, like I said, one of the oldest. There has been a church here since 800 years. The bell tower part of the church that you can see there originates from the 14th century. So imagine how old that is. And obviously it was then incorporated into the larger building, which heads east from the tower, and that's from 1853, the church as we know it today. Because it's a rather large church, there are several ways of getting in and out, and I think this is the nicest one. We were just sitting sort of over there on the wall to introduce the church, and then there are all these wonderful steps leading up to this door of the church. It's not the great west door. There isn't actually a great west door in this church. We'll show you that in a minute, but it's certainly the nicest way of getting into the church. And here we are inside the church finally. Now outside it's about 25 degrees Celsius, beautiful sunshine and boiling hot basically. And in here it's about, I would say about 10 degrees colder, if not more. So it's like someone switched on the air conditioning. So it's actually quite refreshing, shall we say. So this is the church of Marienrachdorf, the church of the Assumption. It's called Maria Himmelfahrt in German, so that's the Assumption. And a very large church, as we said. So, of course, in the east we have the high altar, which is historically rather important. Very nice. We have 2 side altars here at the front, and then sweeping through the church, as you are about to do, there you go, you get an idea of the complete size of this church. It's rather grand, and there up on the balcony at the back, there is the rather small organ. Now, I would have preferred a much larger organ in this church had I been the church builder in those days, but obviously I can't say these things. But we'll have a look at the organ in a minute. It is nonetheless a rather interesting instrument. And this is what I meant about the west end of the church. We're actually inside the tower at the west end of the church. There is no great west gate, as it were. And this has been it's used now as a little chapel. And as you can see from the stonework around here, this is definitely the oldest part of the church still standing. So here we are upstairs in the loft. Now, it's not only an organ loft, it's also a choir loft, as you can see. Lots of seating here for a possible choir. Now, there is actually no longer an official church choir here in Marienrachdorf, but we have a great many choirs here in this parish. I run 3 of them myself, and we regularly perform here when there are services. And if I actually move to the front of the balcony, as it were, you get a sort of full view of how amazingly beautiful this church really is. And you get a full view of how big the church actually is. And all the light streaming in through the rather lovely windows. Not bad, is it? So although this church is enormously large, for this region at least, the organ itself is rather tiny, as you can see. Now, the console here that I'm sitting at is a very sort of small, compact console. It has 3 manuals, but we'll get to that in a minute. But it's a very small, compact console, and not the largest organ, despite the size of the church it speaks into. However, it does fill the church with sound, as I will shortly demonstrate. Here it is in all its glory, the Wagenbach organ of Marienrachdorf, the Church of the Assumption here in Marienrachdorf. And now when you look at it, you think, haha, a 3-manual organ in a church like this, that must be rather amazing. Well, let's look slightly more closely. We have pedal stops for my feet. We have Hauptwerk, great, stops, and it says 2nd manual. And we have swell, 3rd manual stops. So we have a 3rd manual, a 2nd manual, and pedals. What's this? There are no stops for this manual here. This is just a coupler manual. All this does is it plays these two together. That's it. Bit of a shame, really. Here it is then, this magnificent instrument. Small as it may look, it makes a bit of a racket in this church. Ready? And we have that beautiful cathedral acoustic, as you just heard. So although it looks like a rather small organ, and the number of stops it only actually has 21 stops. But it makes a big sound in this church. Not bad. 21 stops, large church, small organ. But the stops have all been voiced perfectly for this size of church. The principle in the Great Manual is enormous. Really rather enormous. There is, of course, a 4-foot principle that goes along with that to brighten things up. To brighten it further, we have a 2-foot principle. To really go over the top, there's a 4-rank mixture starting at 1 1/3, so about there. Lowest note is therefore based on a G. Look at my other videos, I've explained that. So yes. It's a big sound, and I've only got 4 stops there. There's a huge trumpet, a snarly trumpet, almost French in character. It's very French in character, it's out of tune. Oh, hold on, I've missed out the flutes. We have a rather lovely 8-foot flute, and again, quite a large one. Which has a 4-foot flute to brighten it up a bit. There's even a 16-foot bourdon, which really gives it a bit of beef down at the bottom end. This is just the Hauptwerk, just the Great Manual. All the stops, no pedals, it's a big sound. Just the manual stops, there's no pedal stops there at all. Pretty impressive. Upstairs, we have an 8-foot flute, a rather beautiful big 8-foot flute, with a gorgeous 4-foot flute on top of that. I'll play the 4-foot flute alone. This is a new addition to the organ. This was only put in a couple of years ago. What was here before was a very sort of non-existent sounding thing, and it brightened it right up. It's a beautiful one. It's a beautiful flute, isn't it? Both of them together. There's a 2-foot flute there to brighten it even further. There has to be some kind of stringy sound on the organ somewhere, and there's an 8-foot gamba. It doesn't have a celeste to go with it, unfortunately, but it's a rather nice, gentle, stringy sound. There's this funny thing, we've seen this in other organs as well, the sesquialtera, and that's sort of a 2-rank stop. And it's basically from here. It starts out as just one sound at the bottom and then becomes 2 from here. On its own it sounds rather weird. Couple it to an 8-foot stop and it sounds like a clarinet. Yeah? So that's useful for solo effects. There is a mixture up here, a sharp mixture. It's not tuned sharp, it's just called sharp because it's very high. The lowest pipe is 1 foot. Yeah, it's the lowest, the longest pipe, 1 foot. So everything above that gets shorter and shorter. So up here it's minuscule, yeah? But that's a very bright sound with everything together. Strange harmonies there, but why not? There is an oboe stop. There has to be a reed stop somewhere up there. And they've called it a French oboe, which doesn't mean an oboe from an orchestra. It means we're talking sort of a French-style oboe from a French romantic organ. Which can be used with a tremulant, which makes it sort of sound a bit vibrato. Not too bad at all, is it? Now, if you couple all of that together, oh, hold on, I should probably go through the pedal stops quickly. There's nothing all that exciting in the pedal. It's sort of your normal 16, 8, and 4, but there is, for some bizarre reason, a pedal mixture, a 4-rank pedal mixture on an organ this size. It beats me why they put it in there, but they did. So that's the pedal on its own. There is, of course, a huge 16-foot posaune, which is big. And if we give the whole thing a bit of tutti, you've already heard it at the beginning, it sounds like this. And it's beautifully out of tune at the moment because, of course, there are no services here at the moment. The organ isn't being played. Shame. Before I forget, I should say thank you, shouldn't I? Don't forget, you can still help us out if you wish. Don't forget, a thumbs up is the most important thing you can do here. If you haven't already, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to the channel for more organic videos from the region and from around the world, as it were. I do like saying as it were, sorry about that. You can also help us by posting these videos, posting a link to these videos to all your friends on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever these things are called. I'm not on any of those things anymore. I just do YouTube these days. But you can help us out by forwarding these to all your friends and enemies so that they get to know about this. So that's one way of supporting us at the moment. It's kind of difficult at the moment with all this Corona nonsense. Yeah, no one's earning any money, which is rather weird and wonderful. You can, of course, also help us out financially if you wish by joining us. There are links below to Steady and Patreon. You know Patreon, and PayPal.me, where you can wire us something to help us out, because everything at the moment is very gratefully received and rather greatly needed. But anyway, and don't forget, you can also buy a copy of our latest CD. piping hot at the organ. If you don't get enough of this organ music, yeah, you can still get some more jazzy stuff at organs. A rather exciting CD if you haven't already got one. You can buy one here. There's a link to my website, to the web shop. I will get that down here in the picture. So yeah, you can continue to help us out during these weird and wonderful times. That's it. Time now for a piece of music. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.